All right, hello everyone. This is Matt Sykes, a systems engineer here at Verify, and I'll be your host for today's workshop. Today we're joined by my good friend, Mr. Jim Schultens. Hey Jim, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Matt?
Just fantastic. All right, so everyone, for today's workshop, Jim is going to help us identify and troubleshoot issues with missing Cisco call data. Okay, we're going to start off with a quick overview of Verify of our company and what we do. Then Jim is going to help us troubleshoot some issues of missing Cisco data. We'll pause for Q&A and get some of your questions answered. During the demo, if you have any questions, make sure to ask them in the Q&A panel in the bottom right corner of the screen, not the WebEx chat, but the Q&A panel, please. After Q&A, we will reward one lucky attendee a $50 Amazon gift card. So hang around and see if you may have won. Okay, a quick overview of Verify. Verify is the preferred analytics and management solution for Cisco collaboration. We provide industry-leading CDR, UCCX, and Cube call analytics, customizable dashboards and widgets, remote phone control, change management, DNDID dial plan. But today, we're going to focus strictly on how we can identify those issues where Cisco stops sending data or not sending all of us the data to the Verify systems. All right, also for those of you who are looking for more of a hands-off Verify experience, Verify does offer a managed consulting service. This is a service that provides a dedicated Verify SE to do all the heavy lifting, giving you and your users a completely hands-off experience, kind of like an extension of your organization, if you will. Upgrades, one-on-one training, report and dashboard building, your dedicated Verify SE has you covered. Your SE will engage with your team on a one-on-one basis to provide additional consulting, unassisted reporting, dashboarding, configuration, and system monitoring assistance. So the only thing you have to do is call us. If you want any additional information on our ECS service offering, feel free to reach out to your account manager and we'd be happy to see if ECS is right for you. With all that said, let me go ahead and kick this over to Jim and have him help us find some missing data.
All right, I believe I'm sharing here. All right, hello everyone, and thanks for joining another weekly workshop. And I appreciate taking time out of your day to join us here today. As Matt mentioned, today I'll be going over what to do if you are not receiving any CDR or think that you be maybe missing some of that CDR. Let's say you ran a report for an extension or a group of extensions or devices, whatever it may be, and you know that that group had call activity, but you get no results or partial results. You know there should be more calls for a particular extension or extensions. So we're going to cover both of those today. First, I'm going to go over the no results condition. So meaning no matter what your report you run, they all come back with zero records, or your widgets, as in the case of this widget here, you see a drastic drop to no calls on some days. So we were getting data up until June 17th, and then after that we have no data. So something's wrong there. So we're going to cover what to check. There could be a few different things that cause this. So the first thing I would do, looks like no data. So I might go over to the call analytics and reporting and go into the reports. Make sure you choose your correct cluster. In this case, we're on Mexico City. If you come over here to this data summary button at the top right, click on that guy. And this here will show the available CDR data. This is the data that's in the database, so it does match up to what that widget was showing us as June 17th as the last data, or last date of data we have in the database. So obviously we're missing some data there. So what do we do if that's the case? We could check the cluster, make sure it's not suspended, make sure it is enabled. So if we go under CUCM clusters here, it'll bring us to that menu. And in this case, we see I've got two clusters. The one I'm concerned with is Mexico City. That's enabled, so shouldn't be an issue, just that we just don't have data for whatever reason. I'm going to hop over to my lab here. This is my Windows lab. Back in. Just to show you what this cluster suspension will look like if you do go into that. We're going to go in the same area, CUCM clusters. And I've got the one cluster here, it is suspended. So what you could do is try and activate it. It could have been just a blip. Reactivating that cluster will bring it back to enabled and start processing the data. Great, then you're done and you can move on with your day. If the case that these are enabled and your cluster is enabled, that looks good. Next thing I would look at would be to make sure we're not out of disk space on the server. I'll stay on my Windows lab here and under settings icon under server platform. Once this loads up, head on over to the bottom here, hard disk space on my C drive. I would focus on the free space. I've got obviously plenty of space on this, but that could show 0 or close to 0, which means that you are either out or running out of disk space. Similar thing on my Linux lab here, same area, server platform. And on this one, what you want to focus in on is the root directory. So in the middle here, I would focus on the free. Obviously, we've got plenty of space on this one, but again, if it shows 0 or very little space, that could be your issue. The call manager is not able to send the data over, or if you've got MySQL local, it's not able to write that data to the database because that needs space. So what do we do if that's the case? If we're showing no disk space, we've got a couple great knowledge base articles. I'm going to head on over to our knowledge base. For those of you that are unaware, under verify.com, if you go to support page and click on knowledge base, we've got a whole bunch of great articles here. This one, since we're focusing on disk space, I'm just going to type in disk, do a quick search. Verified disk space cleanup is the first one I would look at. So we could clean up some files to regain space on that drive. So scrolling down through this article, I'm not going to do everything here. I'm just going to point out some highlights. Cleaning up snapshots if you're using snapshots, or if you're using them in the past and stopped using them for whatever reason, there could be older files in there and they could be taking up considerable space. So this part of the knowledge base article goes through and how to delete snapshots or see what's used for snapshots and delete those via the web interface. If you're not using snapshots anymore, you don't have this option, then we'll probably have to go into the CLI in the case of Linux, or go into your file path for Windows and just delete those old snapshots. The next thing you can look at is log analysis files. Again, if you're not using them, you shouldn't have to worry about it. If this is blank, don't concern yourself with that. That just means you don't have an audit log directory. But if you do, if that's filled in, you can check that audit log directory, see what you have there. Also want to make sure you have purge audit logs set to something other than keep forever. That's going to obviously take up more space. There is a way under application settings here to clean up now. So once you have that purge setting, you could do a clean up now and it'll clean up those log files. And then you can always check your disk space again, see if you got enough space. If not, we can head on down to the next section, process CDR files. I've seen this more than the other two, where you're keeping the raw data files from Call Manager on the server, and there is no automatic purge for this. Your database purge, and the purge setting is for the database. It doesn't clean up the processed files, so that would need to be manually. And sometimes we've got files going back 3, 4, 5 years that aren't really needed, so we can clean those up and get you your space back. And down below here is kind of some, where to find that. This can also be found on the cluster settings, your path to where the files are. It's going to be in the process directory, and then some commands to clean that area up. Do it by year. So if you have data going back to 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and so on, you can delete the whole year of that database to gain some space there. So let's say that in the case that you went through all this, there's really nothing you can clean up, not then a significant amount, enough to get you back and going. Then what we probably need to do is add space to that drive. Yeah. So another great knowledge base article here is how to increase disk space and verify insight. So you can obviously with Windows you can add the space, and I think a reboot might be required for that. But if you're on a Linux platform, there's a script that you will need to run after adding the space to the VM. We do highly recommend you take a snapshot after adding that space and before running the script. But if you kind of scroll on down, there's some commands you could do to check, but we've already checked. We know we're low on space. We know we want to add drive space. So add your drive space in the VM through VMware or whatever you're using, and then take that snapshot and focus on this script here. Most applications will be higher than 11.1 OVA, so I've never had to run this other script. So this script here can be run. Just copy and paste it from the article into your CLI. Occasionally you may get an error. This up a little bit so you can see it. You should get this, are you sure, yes or no prompt. If you don't, it's probably going to say you need the -F option. F is in Frank. So you just redo the command, add -F at the end. Then you should get this, are you sure prompt, or type in Y for yes. And you'll expect to see this screen here. There probably will be some errors. You can ignore those. The main thing is at the bottom, it's going to automatically reboot the server. Once the server comes back up, you can verify that the space was added with a couple commands in CLI, sudo pv display, sudo lv display. That will give you the following results, and it should show the added drive space here, or you can go back to your server platform and verify UI like we showed before. All right, so that should get you enough space, and get once you add that, add the space and run the partition script, the files should start coming in to verify and get processed. All right. A couple of other possible causes for no CDR or no data. Could be that the call manager just stops sending the data to us. You see this occasionally. So what we would do here, log into call manager, go under serviceability. If I type this right. And what you want to, once this loads up, you're going to go to Tools and Control Center Network Services. Here we go. So on this menu here, Tools, the third option down, Control Center Network Services. Go into there and choose your server. What you want to do is choose your publisher, which is my .45. Click on Go. It'll load up this menu. What we're concerned with is the CDR services, which will be down towards the bottom of this page. And once we get there, you're going to see this first one here, Cisco CDR Repository Manager. That's the service that's responsible for sending the data to verify. Remember, call manager pushes the data to us. We don't go and retrieve it. So this service does do the pushing. It's not service impacting to restart it. So you can go click on the radio button, click restart. It'll reload the page. Most likely when it reloads, it's going to say starting. Just go ahead and click your refresh button. By the time it loads, it should show run. Then what you could do is navigate to your CLI to that your location where the CDR files are going to, which can be found under CUCM clusters again. There. And on this page, it will give you the directory path for where the CDRs for the appropriate cluster should be. You can navigate there in your CLI and see if you see files coming in after restarting that service. If it's been down for months, call manager will retain a certain amount of data depending on how much data buffer, depending on your call volume. seen 2 to 3 months being held there. So it may take, if it's been down that long, it may take a while to get that data generated and pushed over to us in the process. So be patient if you've been down for a while. All right. Windows servers, we've seen some issues, or at least I've seen some issues with Windows servers. Doesn't have a built-in FTP server. You're usually using a third-party app like FileZilla, SolarWinds. It's kind of up to you what you want to use. But I've seen occasionally where that service is not running or having errors. You can try and restart that service, or the server may help get that service going again. But that could be a potential issue if you've, last resort, if you've checked all your disk space and checked all the other things, restarted that service, still not seeing anything in your Windows environment, check the FTP server program you're using. I haven't personally had any issues with Linux FTP, so should be okay with that. But if you suspect that, quick reboot might help as well. All right. Couple other things with no data, very rare. Probably I haven't seen it yet, but I guess it could happen. The time I say it won't happen, it will. But processing errors, usually see that with missing data, some records not processed. I haven't seen it with all data not processed. But if you suspect that's the case, I would suggest opening a ticket with us. We could take a look at the logs and see if that is in fact the case. And on rare occasions, could be an issue with the call manager. I've had that once just recently, where that repository manager service would not stay running. That turned out to be a disk issue. The customer had to get Cisco TAC involved on that. So that's more rare, kind of a last resort. All right, let's go to the case of missing or limited CDR. Maybe missing some records. In that case, go back to my dashboard that was shown before. If you've got widget like mine, which as soon as it comes up, it's showing all calls basically. So I'm getting an idea of how many calls per day. Patient here as it loads up, but we saw no data on those trailing days. You may see a drop in the graph. That way you're missing data. You see, instead of up here, it could be something like this consistently the following days here. What I would recommend for that, first of all, is go into application settings. You should all do this anyway even if you don't suspect missing data. We do have a processing alert where you can get email processing alerts. So I would suggest setting this. You can either set email addresses in here from the pick list, or if your default system alert emails, if that has who you want populated in here, you can turn that on and they'll automatically, whoever's configured in here will get those email alerts for processing errors. So, you can be ahead of the game. Instead of having one of your users saying they think they're missing calls in the report, you'll get an email if there are processing errors happening, right? So that would be, if it's partial data, you will see that, you'll get the alert. And we do, most of the time, what I've seen with that is, there's some fields in Call Manager, or that we receive in the data from Call Manager, that are larger than what we expected. So the tables in the database need to be enlarged. Some of the data there to hold that larger data that we're expecting, our larger field that we're expecting. So we do have a couple scripts, one for MySQL, one for MS SQL, that can be run against the database, and that'll take care of that processing error issue. Again, with the processing error, I would suggest opening a ticket with us. We can look at the logs. I'll probably have you send us the logs and just verify that that's what the issue is. The other thing for missing or low data, you're getting some, not getting it all. Back to the Call Manager, This second service here, the CDR agent service, this is going to be on the publisher, and it's also going to be on all your subscribers. What this service does, this service sends the data from the subscriber to the publisher, and then, like I said, the publisher sends the data to us. So on one of your subscribers, if the get our subscriber here, it does take a little bit to load, but you're going to see the only service under CDR services for a subscriber is the CDR agent service. Again, not service impacting. I would recommend to restart that. If you've got more than one subscriber, just do it on all of them. Probably take less time than trying to figure out which subscriber is not sending the data to the publisher. So as soon as this loads up, see that. But again, not service impacting, can be restarted. This is, again, CDR service is the only thing for the subscriber is the agent service. So again, restart that on all your subscribers. I wouldn't hurt to restart it on the publisher as well. You shouldn't need to restart the repository manager if you are getting some data. So I think that about covers it, and that's all the content I have for today. Matt, did we get any questions that came in?
We do have a few, and we have some comments. So if you wouldn't mind, Jim, keep sharing your screen out because Kevin did ask a question here a couple moments ago, and it was, I'm not sure if you covered this, I wasn't paying attention earlier, but
I know how that goes.
exactly what to do or how to check if like the subscribers, for instance, aren't generating CDR records that should be getting routed to Verify as well. I would probably recommend you actually running the cluster check within Verify to actually check those flags and those settings. So if you wouldn't mind, could you run a quick cluster check for everyone? And the cluster check will showcase to us the flags that we expect to see turned on from Call Manager routing data over to our Verify application. So Jim will mimic that right now. From the cluster section for the CUCM, correct, there's a check on the far right. He's going to run one check, two checks. And once the second check comes back, it's going to give us all the flags configured for the needs for Verify in a moment or two. From there, we'll be able to see the values, whether it's a yes or a no. Definitely the CDR flags as a default for the Call Manager nodes are set to false out of the box. So certainly sometimes where the publisher has its CDR flag turned on, but the subscribers unfortunately either were forgotten about or just wasn't attended to, could be set to false. So we could be missing data in that realm as well. And Jim's going to kind of peruse this real briefly once this this lab check comes back. Here we go. So if you wouldn't mind zoom in for real quickly, just for our eyes. So everything's green up top, the three green sections, so that looks good. So, but yeah, correct. So this lab that Jim's connected to right now only has one publisher on it. But if there were multiple nodes in a in a field production environment, there would be multiple nodes listed underneath here. But where Jim's hovering over for the current value would be the CDR flag. Is that set to true or set to false? If it is set to false, which as you can see over on the right, just a hair, the default values are set to false. So just make sure that those are in line. And then certainly you can go to Call Manager and turn those on if they're set to false. But unfortunately, though, if they are set to false, no way for us to reharvest that data that was not generated off of those subscriber nodes.
Right. Good point.
Yep, good. So good question, Kevin. Thank you for that. And Ramiro makes a nice has a nice comment here for you, Jim. He does want to make everyone aware that it is possible for our Linux OVA to actually have your security group to actually go ahead and turn on the built-in Linux firewall by your security group. Definitely with the rising awareness on security these days, and I believe Jim that you actually helped him out with that very swiftly not too long ago.
Yep.
So thank you for that comment, Ramiro.
Yep. Thank you.
But everyone, this is, I suppose, now the Q&A portion of the webinar or workshop session. Excuse me. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to go ahead and navigate them to us right now in the Q&A panel, and we will address them in the next minute or two before we move on. Do want to make another mention here. Simi did make a nice little mention to us that the processing error alerts, she was unaware of that, but now is aware of that, and those are definitely very beneficial for all to know that if those processing errors are happening, to be in the know, let's say.
Yeah, we've also got, we talked about disk space, and we do have alerts for the disk space too. You can set a threshold that, as the disk is getting lower, you can set an alert to be sent out instead of, you get a warning ahead of time instead of when it's totally out of space and not able to. So that's down at the bottom. Same thing with the default system alerts, or just put in your own. can set the your threshold value here. Yeah, good point. Yep.
One last question here. It looks like from Christopher. He says he's noticed that some of his widgets, sometimes there are periods of no data in the bar graphs. I'm assuming that the refresh doesn't always necessarily populate the missing data, but clicking an edit and saving the widget without it making changes can resolve the issue. Is this a bug or have I done something wrong? No, Christopher, you haven't done anything wrong. I think there was, wouldn't call it a snafu so much, but there's a refresh interval built into the widgets, and there's logic now with caching for them to make them a less of a load on the system. I think that you may be running into. We are cleaning that up, and actually that should be kind of resolved and put to bed actually in the next release due out in a couple of weeks.
Correct. Yep. I just dealt with that today. So yeah, that's coming out in 13 GA. So
Correct.
there. Yeah.
All right, so good questions all. If anyone has any more, please feel free to go ahead and toss them over to us. If not, I'm going to grab the sharing rights in a moment.
Stop sharing.
Let's make sure I have all my ducks in a row. So any questions, go ahead and lob them over to us now.
You should be up, man.
I am. All right, let me get my Q&A panel back over here, just in case. Okay. Okay, if there are no more questions, I'd like to mention our user community, Planet Verify, our new online community where you can connect with your peers and expand your knowledge of all things Verify. Please, plus you may end up, with some new drink recipes from our cantina as well. It is also where you can sign up to be part of our upcoming Verify 13.0 EFT. So please feel free to go ahead and reach out to us, or you can, as you can see all the links on the screen here, you can visit planet.verify.com, verify.com/planet. Definitely a couple of ways to gain access into it and get yourself an account and built and registered and communicating with us and the community of peers.
Yeah, I'm getting kind of bored on my drink, so I need some new recipes.
Exactly, some new concoctions for sure.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So I suppose the moment that we've all been waiting for, if there's nothing else to address. So the winner of this week's $50 Amazon gift card for today's workshop is going to be Steve Bulka. Woo! Congratulations, Steve. We will be reaching out to your account manager to get you paid shortly. Okay, thank you for attending. For those, don't forget to join us next week where Brian and Victor will be showcasing phone control macros for us. Macros 101, I believe, is what is being called. Always a great learning experience with those two. So certainly feel free to go ahead and register and join us next week as well. I would like to thank everyone for taking time in your day and joining us, and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great week.